Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. Hopefully last step. Somebody's taken a pair of cutters and snipped that ground off. You can tell because it's got that chisel point end on it that indicates a cut with a pair of cutters like this. This plug has no value, so we're going to cut it off. And we're going to mount this inexpensive connector. Made by Vanguard. Comes with a owner's manual and safety instructions. I'm supposed to cut 1 inch of conductors free of the outer sheath and then strip them back 3/8 of an inch. It says to twist strands, do not tin conductors. There was a debate for a long time about whether you were supposed to tin the ends of the wires. And once again, the consensus, although this is practical science, mechanics, and precedent based, the argument is that if you tin the wires, it stiffens the wires and it causes the wires to only bend right at the end of the solder. So anytime there's bending moment on the wires, it makes the wires develop stress cracks and break right at the end of the solder. And since we're using stranded wire for a reason, so that the wire is flexible, I don't think we want to lose that flex right at the end, so I don't tin the wires. Used to. Back when I was a kid, heck, we soldered everything. So first thing I'm going to do is loosen up this clamp so I can get the wire in it. It's an inexpensive cord cap, but it's got some good design features. I'll loosen that up a little bit more. There are metal bodied plugs, and there are plugs that have a metal sheath over a plastic body. I'm not a big fan of metal cord caps. All it takes is one little mistake and a whisker of wire sticking out, and then you got a problem with people getting a buzz off of it every time they plug it into the wall. Want to be careful not to cut down into the insulation on the conductor. And also not cut your knuckles. A lot of electricians, I'm going to put this back so that I don't cut myself. A lot of electricians over the years have done silly things like taking the wire, holding it in the palm of their hand, and then using, once again I've got the blade completely retracted, but using the point of the blade to cut down through the insulation on the sheath. And in doing that, considering that this in that case would be out like this, stabbing that knife right into the palm of their hand. Had to take a couple guys to the emergency room because of that. Lots of tendons and a whole lot of blood, and a few stitches later, if we're lucky it's just a few stitches, I'd bring the guy back and he'd have his hand all wrapped up in bandages and he'd be done. We hired him from the hiring hall. If he couldn't work, we didn't keep him. And since he worked out of the hiring hall, he didn't have any insurance or benefits through us, so he was out of work. Not a good thing for him or his family, or us either. You know, we hired him because we wanted to have somebody to work. We didn't necessarily want to have somebody that was going to cut their hand the first day. So be mindful if you're using a knife to cut the insulation off of the wire, that you don't want to cut your hand, because there's no advantage to that for anybody. There we go. Little wire stripper works okay, but this SJO cord, which is really good cord, but it's rubber sheath, and it doesn't tear off as easy. Just a hair longer than 3/8. That one's right at 3/8. This one's just right at 3/8. So all in all, pretty good. Pretty good on that. This is the ground lug, so it gets the green wire. I'll give this just a slight J hook. Not enough room to get the wire underneath there and still get the screw in. I'm going to slip the conductor between the plate and I want to come in on the right hand side of the screw. Now, why is that? Because coming in on the right hand side of the screw means when you go to tighten the screw down, it will catch a hold of the wire and pull it down into the joint. You always want to wind the wire around that connector clockwise. Now, this is the bronze screw. The bronze screw means it's the black wire. And I'm gonna shove that out, get a little room in there to stuff the wire down into the gap. Just like so. And make sure and hold it right so that the wire stays down in there and doesn't jam in the bottom and become untwisted. Goes down on the right hand side of the screw. Tighten the screw up. And this is the silver screw, and that gets the white wire. These are better than the stab-in terminals, but only just. And I gotta tell you, they can be a bit annoying. So we're gonna go for the handyman's friend. No, not duct tape. Clamp. We'll let it hold this darn thing down so I don't have to try and be a three-handed ape. tighten those right down. Not so tight I'm stripping the screw, but tight enough they're not going to work their way loose. There, cord cap's on. Oh, wait a minute. The sleeve that goes over the top of it. Now, I think you watched me slide that onto the wire before I put the conductors into the screws. There's usually something that acts as a keeper. This little notch. This little peg goes into this little notch in the outside of the plug. There we go. Now I'll slide the screw in there and start it. Don't tighten it down, you want to just start it because you got to get all three of them started before you tighten any of them. If you don't, if you try and tighten one up and then start the others, quite often they don't line up. This is a lot easier. The other thing I'm going to do is, while this has got a little slack in there, I'm going to tighten this cord sheath into the clamp. I'm going to tighten that right down too. Now this is plastic, you can strip it out pretty easy. There. Now we got a cord cap on there, it's not going to come loose. Should work just fine. Now I tighten up these screws. And some people say, well, why not use an underwriter's knot on the conductors? Well, if you were watching, there's really nothing to grip the underwriter's wired knot to. This grabs a hold of the sheath and the conductors underneath it, does a pretty good job of gripping it. Thinking this is an acceptable plug. Then we take this because this is a limited 90-day warranty on this Vanguard plug. Made in China, I'm sure. And this is the owner's manual and safety instructions, so I should keep a record. Just in case something happens in the next 90 days, I can call the company and get a refund or get a replacement. That's probably not going to happen. Just sending a letter back and forth is like 53 cents every time you do it. Every time you send it. So, not going to do a whole lot of letters of complaint. You can email the company, but it's some nebulous company across the Pacific, and who knows what you're going to get. Main thing is, look at it while you're putting it together. If it looks bad, don't put it on. This happens to look okay. I'm not saying it's the world's best, but it's not the worst I've seen. Okay, we're going to unplug this light and plug in the cord cap. If it goes pop, it means I've done it wrong. Nope, no pop. blowing okay. Now let's turn the heat on it. This controls the temperature. When you turn it off like that, it doesn't put a whole lot of air through, and that causes the elements to heat up. See them glowing orange down in there? When you open this up, pumps more air in there, lowers the temperature of the air coming out. See that the elements are just barely red, clear down inside there, if you can see them. Rather than just directly shutting this off, I always like to leave it on cool for a while with the vent open all the way. Let everything cool down inside there until the air coming out of it is fairly cool. Then I shut it off. For a cheap Harbor Freight connector, not too bad. This gun is rated at 12 amps and this cord cap is rated at 15. So I'm under the limits of the cord cap and also under the limits of most outlets in your house. Most of the breakers in a house are 15 amp breakers. So this will probably work a good long time. Another job done. Happy to say this one's ready to go back into operation and back on the shelf and be ready to use next time. If you have any suggestions for a new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union without the express written permission of the parents or the legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.